Hi, this is Mallikarjun, lecturer in Mechanical Engineering, GMRP Utnur. The subject I am going to discuss in this video session is engineering materials, and the topic I am going to discuss is from the 6th unit, and the topic is discuss the effect of carbon on cast iron. So before we discuss about the effect of carbon on cast iron, let me first discuss what is a cast iron. Cast iron is a group of iron carbon alloy with a carbon content more than 2%. Its usefulness derives from its relatively low melting temperature. The alloy constraints affect its color when fractured. So that is, cast iron is nothing but it is an alloy of iron and carbon. Pure iron is not called as cast iron actually. Pure iron is called as wrought iron. And when this wrought iron is mixed with a little amount of carbon, say 0.0025 carbon, then it is called as steel. And steel, the moment pure iron is combined with carbon, until the carbon content is less than 2%, then it is called as steel. And if the carbon content is more than 2% and up to 6.67% carbon, then that alloy is called as cast iron. And the reason why it is called as cast iron, let us discuss. Cast irons are those irons or those alloys of iron and carbon which cannot be fabricated or formed or made with any other fabrication method or manufacturing method except casting, that is molding and pouring the molten metal into the mold cavity is called as casting. So therefore those irons which cannot be formed of any other mechanical operation or any other fabrication method like forging, rolling, welding, any operation, it cannot be made, the component cannot be made with any other technique, powder metallurgy technique or whatever technique, except casting. So cast irons are those irons which can be only formed by casting, is called as cast iron. So this group of iron carbon alloys with a carbon content more than 2% till 6.67% is called as cast iron. And cast iron is basically again broadly divided into two groups. We can say three groups, but also we can say two groups. Say, to be strictly speaking, let us say three. The first one is hypoeutectic cast iron. Second one is eutectic cast iron. Third one is hypereutectic cast iron. Cast iron having carbon content from 2% to 4.3% carbon is called as hypereutectic cast iron. That is, irons containing carbon from 2% to 4.3%, then those irons are called as hypereutectic cast irons. And carbon containing 4.3% in iron is called as high eutectic cast iron. It is simply called as eutectic cast iron. The carbon containing in iron, around 4.3% carbon in iron, then that iron is called as eutectic cast iron. And if the carbon content is more than 4.3% up to 6.67%, and that cast iron is called as hypereutectic cast iron. So this is the classification of cast iron. So then now let us understand the effect of carbon on cast iron. So its usefulness derived from its relatively low melting temperatures. The alloy constituents affect its color when fractured. White cast iron has a carbide impurities which allow cracks to pass straight through, and grey cast iron has graphite flakes which deflect a passing crack and initiate countless new cracks as the material breaks. And ductile cast iron has spherical graphite nodules which stop the crack from further progressing. So therefore, carbon ranging from 1.8 to 4% weight and silicon 1 to 3% weight are mainly alloying elements of cast iron. Iron alloys with lower carbon content are known as steel, that we have already discussed. So cast irons tends to be brittle except for malleable cast irons. With its relatively low melting point, good fluidity, castability, excellent machinability, resistance to deformation and wear resistant, cast irons have become an engineering material with a wide range of applications and are used in pipes, machines and automotive industries, such as cylinder heads, cylinder gearbox cases, and it is resistant to damage by oxidation. So cast iron is made actually. How cast iron is made? Let us see first, and then we will discuss about the effect of carbon in the cast iron. Cast iron is made from pig iron, which is a product of melting iron ore in a blast furnace. And cast iron can be made directly from the molten pig iron or by remelting pig iron. So cast iron can be directly made from pig iron or by remelting pig iron, often along with substantial quantities of iron, steel, limestone and carbon, and taking various steps to remove undesirable contaminants. Phosphorus and sulfur may be burnt out of the molten iron, but this also burns out the carbon, which must be replaced. Depending upon the application, carbon and silicon content are adjusted to the desired levels, which may be anywhere from 2 to 3.5, and silicon content is from 1 to 3% respectively. If desired, other elements are then added to the melt before the final form of produced by casting. So cast iron's properties are changed by adding various alloying elements and the effect of carbon. So if carbon percentage is more, it becomes more and more strong and brittle. So silicon is the most important alloying element because it forces carbon out of solution. So therefore, basically the presence of carbon and the form of carbon present in iron will decide whether whether the cast iron is a white cast iron or a grey cast iron or a spheroidal graphite cast iron or a malleable cast iron. I repeat, based on the amount of carbon present and the form of carbon present in cast iron will decide what kind of a cast iron it is. Cast irons are basically broadly classified into four groups. So before discussing about the different types of cast irons, let me first tell you, first let me explain what is the effect of carbon on cast iron. The effect of carbon in cast iron is it increases the strength. Carbon improves the strength and hardness of cast iron. So cast iron tends to be brittle except for malleable cast irons with its relatively low melting point. So the effect of silicon becomes very crucial in cast iron because as the silicon content is more, the silicon will make the carbon come out of the iron. So a low percentage of silicon always allows carbon to remain in solution, forming iron carbide and the production of white cast iron. So whatever carbon present in it with a low content of silicon, if the percentage of silicon is low, then automatically the carbon in the iron it forms an intermediate phase, a non-compound, a compound which is non-metal called iron carbide Fe3C. And this iron carbide is formed because of low silicon content in the iron. So therefore, a low percentage of silicon allows carbon to remain in solution forming iron carbide, and this iron carbide is formed at the grain boundaries. When cooling from the critical temperature, it forms an iron carbide network, that is cementite network, at the grain boundary region. So this iron carbide is called as cementite and the cementite is white in color. So when this iron which has a cementite network across the grain boundary, and when it breaks or fails, the cracked surface appears to be white. Therefore, this cast iron is called as white cast iron. And if the carbon content is more, then grey cast iron will be formed. So what is grey cast iron? Grey cast iron has a graphite flakes which deflect a passing crack and initiate countless new cracks as the material breaks. So before I discuss about the uh, graphite cast iron or gray cast iron, let me explain you the effect of other underlying elements like manganese, chromium, molybdenum, titanium, and vanadium contracts the contracts the effect of silicon present in it. And promotes the retention of carbon. The and the formation of those carbides, nickel and copper increases strength and machinability, but do not change the amount of graphite formed. See, we are not discussing about the to retain carbon. Most of the other elements are allowed, like manganese, chromium, molybdenum, titanium, and vanadium will contract the effect of silicon and promotes the retention of carbon. And the addition of nickel and copper increases the strength and machinability but do not change the formation of graphite flakes. The carbon in the form of graphite results in a softer iron, reduces shrinkage, lowers strength, and decreases density. I repeat, the carbon in the form of graphite flakes or graphite results in softer iron. This is the main point. This is the main effect of carbon. If carbon is in the form of graphite, iron will be softer and reduces shrinkage, lowers strength, and decreases density. So the carbon percentage as much as should be in the limited range. So sulfur, largely a contaminant when present, forms iron sulfide, which prevents the formation of graphite and increases hardness. I repeat, sulfur is a contaminant when present in iron and it forms iron sulfide, which prevents the formation of graphite and increases hardness. So therefore, sulfur in iron to some extent is admissible. So the problem with sulfur is that it makes molten cast iron viscous. So there is an advantage with it and a disadvantage with it. So what is the advantage with it? The advantage of sulfur in iron is sulfur forms iron sulfide and allowing the and prevents the formation of graphite. So if graphite is not formed, it increases hardness. The formation of graphite increases softness, that is ductility. So but the disadvantage of sulfur present in iron is sulfur increases the viscosity of the fluid molten iron. So when this molten iron is poured in the mold cavities, the flowability of the molten iron will be reduced. So this causes defects in the casting. So to counteract the effect of sulfur, manganese is added because the two form into manganese sulfide instead of iron sulfide. So when manganese added into the iron, instead of forming iron sulfide and preventing carbon to form into graphite, when manganese is added, so sulfur will react with manganese and forms manganese sulfide instead of iron sulfide. So this manganese sulfide is lighter than the melt, so it tends to float out of the melt and into the slag. So what is it that we have to do? So the carbon, if the carbon in the iron is in the graphite form, it forms it it gives a softer iron which decreases the hardness and strength. So what happens when sulfur is present in the iron? It forms iron sulfide and gives more and makes and form. So iron sulfide prevents the formation of graphite, and when the graphite is not formed, then it will be in the cementite form. Carbon will be in cementite. Carbon will react with iron and forms iron carbide, which is cementite, and the cementite increases the hardness. So the problem with sulfur is that it makes the molten cast iron viscous. So to counteract the effects of sulfur, manganese added because of the two form into manganese sulfide. So when sulfur reacts with manganese instead of iron sulfide, so the carbon which is in iron will not form into graphite, and it will be in the cementite, and it increases the hardness. I repeat, the carbon in the form of graphite results in a softer iron, reduces shrinkage, lowers strength, and decreases density. So if we need a strong cast iron with high strength and hardness, the carbon should be in the form of cementite, not in the form of graphite. So sulfur is a largely contaminant element when present in iron, and this iron will react with sulfur to give or to form iron sulfide, which prevents the formation of graphite and increases hardness. So if we want to increase the hardness, we should allow sulfur in it. And if hardness is not required and only soft iron is required, then sulfur should not affect the formation of graphite. So in order to neutralize the effect of sulfur, we add manganese. So when manganese added into iron, sulfur will react with manganese and forms manganese sulfide, and which allows the formation of graphite. So the manganese sulfide is lighter than the molten iron, so it tends to float out the melt or molten iron and into the slag. So the amount of manganese required to neutralize sulfur is 1.7 into sulfur content plus 0.3%. If more than this amount of manganese is added, then manganese carbide forms, which increases hardness and chilling, except in gray iron, where up to 1% manganese. So when manganese is added, as we discussed, the alloying agents are manganese, chromium, molybdenum, titanium, and vanadium. What happens is manganese forms manganese carbide manganese carbide, which increases the hardness and the chilling. So except in gray iron, up to 1% manganese increases strength and density. So nickel is one of the most common alloying elements because it refines the pearlite and graphite structure. So the most important alloying element is nickel, and it refines the pearlite and graphite structure, improves toughness, and evens out hardness differences between section thickness. And chromium is added in small amounts to reduce free graphite, produce chill, and because it is powerful carbide stabilizer, nickel is often added in conjunction. So whenever nickel is added to iron, chromium is also added to stabilize the carbide formations, and nickel will refines the pearlite structure and improves the toughness. So a small amount of tin can be added as a substitute for 0.5% chromium. Copper is added in the ladle or in the furnace on the order of 0.5 to 2.5% to decrease chill. Cooling effect, that is endothermic reaction. So to maintain the molten metal in hot condition, in order to achieve good flowability and in order to reduce the viscosity, chromium is always added to reduce free graphite, and it's a powerful carbide stabilizer. So instead of chromium, a 0.5 for substitute for 0.5% chromium, a small amount of tin can also be added. So copper is added in the ladle or in the furnace on the order of 0.5 to 2.5% decrease to decrease chill, refine graphite, and increase fluidity. And the other element is molybdenum. Molybdenum is added on the degasser and deoxidizer. Molybdenum is added on the order of 0.3 to 1% to increase chill and refine the graphite and pearlite structure. It is often added in conjunction with nickel, copper, and chromium to form high strength irons. Titanium is added as a degasser and deoxidizer, but it also increases fluidity. So vanadium is added to cast iron to stabilize cementite, increase hardness, and increase resistance to wear. So vanadium is very important. Vanadium is added to cast iron to stabilize cementite. So when cementite is stabilized, and automatically hardness will increase and resistance to wear will also increase. Therefore, then coming to zirconium, 0.1 to 0.3% zirconium helps to form graphite, and also it deoxidizes and increases the fluidity. So these are the effect of other alloying elements. So what does nickel do? So nickel improves the strength, and it refines the pearlite and graphite structure, and which improves the toughness and evens out hardness differences between section thickness. That means throughout the section, if there is no uniform hardness, then by adding nickel, it refines the pearlite structure and graphite structure, so toughness is improved. So what about chromium? Chromium is added in small amounts to reduce free graphite. So when chromium is added to reduce free graphite, free graphite and produce chill, and because it is a powerful carbide stabilizer. So chromium is a carbide stabilizer. That means it forms a cemented or any other carbides. So nickel is often added because nickel refines the pearlite and graphite structure, and chromium stabilizes the uh, carbide structure. So a small amount of tin can be added as a substitute for 0.5% chromium. So if instead of chromium, tin is relatively low cost compared to chromium, tin can also be added. And copper is also added in the ladle or in the furnace on the order of 0.5 to 2.5% to decrease chill and refine graphite and increase fluidity. So molybdenum is also very important alloying element. So titanium is added as a degasser and deoxidizer, but it also increases fluidity. So titanium is the other alloying element which removes the gases dissolved in the metal. And now a 0.15 to 0.5% vanadium is added to cast iron to stabilize the cementite, which increases hardness. So all these elements are very important alloying elements. Each and every alloying element has its own importance. So therefore, depending upon the required mechanical properties of the cast iron, these alloying elements are added. So when vanadium is added to cast iron to stabilize cementite, increases hardness and increases resistance to wear and heat. And when zirconium is added in the proportion of from 0.1 to 0.3%, it helps to form graphite and deoxidize and increase fluidity. So when zirconium is added, automatically cast iron becomes soft. So in malleable iron melts, bismuth is added on the scale of 0.002 to 0.01% to increase the percentage of silicon added. In white iron, boron is added to aid in the production of malleable iron. It also reduces the coarsening effect of bismuth. So this is the effect of carbon when the other alloying elements are added to cast iron. So based on the percentage of carbon present in it, based on the form of carbon present in the cast iron is divided into four categories, that is white cast iron, grey cast iron, spheroidal graphite cast iron, and malleable cast iron. Spheroidal graphite cast iron can also be called as ductile cast iron. So, how to produce this white cast iron and grey cast iron, and then spheroidal graphite iron, and then malleable cast iron? Let us discuss. So, grey cast iron is sorry. White cast iron displays white fractured surfaces due to the presence of an iron carbide precipitate called cementite with a lower silicon content and faster cooling rate. I repeat, with lower silicon content and faster cooling rate, the carbon in white cast iron precipitates it out as a metastable phase called cementite. So this Fe3 rather than graphite is formed. So the cementite which precipitates from the melt forms as a relatively large particles as the iron carbide precipitates out. It withdraws carbon from the original melt, moving the mixture towards one that is closer to eutectic. And the remaining phase is lower iron carbon austenite, which on cooling might transform to martensite. So these eutectic carbides are much too large to provide the benefit of what is called precipitation hardening, as in some steels where much smaller cemented precipitates transform to martensite. So these eutectic carbides might inhibit plastic deformation by impeding the movement of dislocations through the pure iron ferrite matrix. Rather, they increase the bulk hardness of the cast iron simply by virtue of their own very high hardness and their substantial volume fraction, such that the bulk hardness can be approximated by a rule of mixtures. So, whenever the white cast iron is braked or fractured, the fracture surface area appears to be white because of the formation of the metastable phase cementite. And coming to the grey cast iron is characterized by its graphitic microstructure, that is, whenever the silicon is more around 1 to 3%, it's it promotes the formation of graphite flakes across the, instead of forming cementite, it forms graphite flakes near the grain boundary. So whenever this gray cast iron breaks, the surface appears to be grayish in color. So it is most commonly used as cast iron and most widely used as cast material based on weight. So most cast irons have chemical composition of 2.5 to 4% carbon and 1 to 3% silicon in iron. So grey cast iron has less tensile strength and shock resistance than steel, but its compressive strength is comparable to low and medium carbon. But its compressive strength is comparable to low and medium carbon steels. That means whatever the compressive strength that the low carbon steel and medium carbon steel possess, the same compressive strength the grey cast iron possesses. So these mechanical properties are controlled by the size and the shape of the graphite flakes present in the microstructure and can be characterized according to the ASTM number. So therefore, grey cast iron is formed from white cast iron. So white cast iron is the raw material for producing grey cast iron. And another interesting fact is white cast iron is the raw material for grey cast iron, for spheroidal graphite cast iron or ductile cast iron, and malleable cast iron. What is the difference between ductile cast iron and malleable cast iron? Ductile cast iron has more tensile strength. It has plastic deformation under tensile load, and in malleable cast iron, it has plastic deformation when compressive loads are applied. So therefore, white cast iron has the maximum strength and hardness than any other cast irons because the presence of cementite near the grain boundary area. So therefore, uh, the presence of silicon promotes the formation of graphite flakes near the grain boundaries. A grey cast iron is formed. And now coming to the spheroidal graphite cast iron, and this cast iron has graphite in the form of very tiny nodules called as spheroids in the form of concentric layers forming the nodules. As a result, the properties of ductile or spheroidal graphite cast iron are that of a spongy steel without the stress concentration effects that flakes of graphite would produce. That means spheroidal graphite cast iron is much softer than grey cast iron. Grey cast iron is softer than white cast iron, and spheroidal graphite cast iron or ductile cast iron is softer than grey cast iron, and malleable cast iron is softer than spheroidal graphite cast iron. So now the carbon percentage present in spheroidal graphite cast iron is 3 to 4%, and percentage of silicon is 1.8 to 2.8%, and tiny amounts of 0.02 to 0.1% of magnesium is added, and only 0.02 to 0.04% of cerium is also added. So because of the addition of this magnesium, instead of forming flakes, it forms spheroids due to the surface tension. Carbon forms into small globules form called as nodules. Therefore, it is also called as nodular cast iron or spheroidal graphite cast iron or ductile cast iron. So the properties are similar to iron, but the parts can be cast with larger sections. Actually, spheroidal graphite cast iron is also spheroidal graphite cast iron properties are also similar to the properties of malleable cast iron, but ductile cast iron parts can be cast with larger sections. So coming to malleable, so malleable iron starts as white iron casting, that is then heat treated for a day or two at about 950 degrees centigrade and then cooled a day or two. As a result, carbon in the carbide iron carbide transforms into graphite and ferrite plus carbon. The slope, I repeat, the iron carbide in the iron transforms into graphite and ferrite structure. So ferrite is soft. So the slow process allows the surface tension to form the graphite into spheroidal particles rather than flakes. Due to their lower aspect ratio, the spheroids are relatively short and far from one another and have a lower cross section, propagating crack. So they also have blunt boundaries as opposed as flakes, which elevates the stress concentration problems found in grey cast iron. So this is about malleable cast iron. So the uh, structures of this is given here: graphite, graphite cast iron, and spheroidal graphite cast iron, and malleable cast iron. Microstructures are shown. So this is about the effect of carbon and the comparison of white, grey, nodular and malleable cast irons. I hope uh, you understood the video, and in the next video we'll be discussing about the uh, steels, classification of steels. Thank you.